As Ukraine and the US work to create a suitable multi-point peace plan to present to Russia, the Ukraine war is still ongoing. Nothing has stopped. Russia continues to push in Donetsk while striking Ukraine's cities and energy infrastructure. Ukraine replies with sturdy defense and precise, long-range strikes. And Ukraine just pulled off a massive example of the latter. In an aerial assault that devastated several Russian targets, Ukraine just delivered a series of haymakers to Vladimir Putin. One of those shots will hurt much more than the other. Ukraine has blown up Putin's secret experimental jet, exposing Russia's biggest weakness in the process. On November 25th, the Kyiv Post was among several outlets to report on Ukraine conducting a massive overnight raid that took out a slew of key Russian assets. The outlet says that Ukraine took a clever approach to its strikes, first taking out entire networks of Russian air defenses before using the gaps created by the loss of those defenses to shove drones and missiles right into some of Russia's most sensitive locations. If that sounds painful, it's because it is. Ukraine's strike was complex, meticulously planned, and extremely effective. The Kyiv Post says that the attack involved dozens of drones and missiles, which were launched during the night of November 24th and into the early hours of November 25th. Those weapons hit multiple targets several hundred miles apart, and Russia has been left with some massive wounds to lick. Among the targets were a drone factory, a bomber repair plant, one of Russia's most important military airfields, 2 oil refineries, and a high-tech air defense unit. Those targets were spread across the map as Ukraine's drones and missiles reached Novorossiysk and Tuapse, both of which are port cities in the Black Sea. Ukraine also targeted Taganrog, which is a port city in the Azov Sea, and it's that last strike that has captured all of the headlines. We'll tell you why in a moment. According to the War Zone, or TWZ, there are still question marks over which drones and missiles Ukraine used during its overnight strike. The Kyiv Post seems to be more certain, as it claims that Ukraine used a combination of jet-propelled, long-range drones, that Ukraine has named BARs, along with devastating Neptune cruise missiles. Another type of drone, this one driven by a propeller, was also used, though it's unclear which specific model that drone may have been. The latter account has been confirmed by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, which took to Telegram to declare success of the country's long-range operation. As part of reducing the military, economic, and offensive potential of the Russian aggressor, on the night of November 25th, units of the missile forces and artillery, in cooperation with the Special Operations Forces, the coastal missile forces of the Navy, and the forces of the unmanned systems, in particular using BARS jet UAVs and Neptune cruise missiles, successfully struck several strategic objects of the Russian aggressor, the ministry declared in a November 25th post. The ministry also discussed several of the targets that it struck, but as we just mentioned, one, more than any other, is extremely important. On the surface, Ukraine's attack on the Taganrog airfield, which is located in Rostov and is close to the Azov Sea, seems like another strike against Russia's bombers and strategic aircraft. Indeed, Ukraine hit that airfield hard with the goal of taking out as many Russian planes as possible. The Noel Reports X account claims that 50 Ukrainian drones and 3 of the country's missiles hit their targets in Taganrog. The New Voice of Ukraine adds that Taganrog is the home to the Beriev aircraft repair plant and the Molnia Atlant aero drone production facility. So it's clear that Ukraine wanted to take out some of Russia's aerial assets, in addition to making it more difficult to build or repair more of those assets. However, even Ukraine may not have known about the big secret hidden at the Taganrog airfield. But that secret has just been exposed. The airfield Ukraine struck with its drones was home to a secret Russian aircraft that has been in development for years and is so high-tech that it uses lasers against its enemies. That aircraft, TWZ reports, is the unique A-60. This aircraft uses a Russian Il-76MD Candid transport airframe that has been converted to enable Russia to bring aerial laser warfare to the battlefield, and it was one of only 2 known prototypes, the Telegraph reports. Little is known about the A-60, as Russia has tried to keep the existence of this aircraft hidden, but we know that it exists, likely in prototype form. Or more accurately, the A-60 existed. Ukraine just put an end to that. United 24 Media dubs the plane ultra-rare in its report on Ukraine's strike, in addition to offering more details about the aircraft. It says that the A-60 was born from an idea originating in the Soviet era for an airborne laser weapons platform that Russia could use to both shoot down aircraft and blind satellites, and other navigational tools those aircraft used to see threats coming. It was the strike on the Beriev facility that did the damage, with United 24 Media claiming the plant has housed the A-60 for roughly 2 decades. This has been confirmed by satellite images over the years that show the A-60 being moved around the airfield. The plane has never moved outside of the Taganrog airbase that also serves as the main flight test site for the Beriev repair plant. As for why this particular aircraft is so special, United 24 Media says that you shouldn't be fooled by its use of an Il-76 airframe. Russia's experimental jet merely used that frame as a foundation on which to build, with several tweaks over the decades revealing the true purpose of the A-60. Among those tweaks is the creation of a large nose radome that the A-60 uses to acquire its targets. However, it's the small dorsal fairing slotted behind the A-60's wings that hides the aircraft's biggest weapon, a retractable turret that contains a 1 megawatt airborne laser. For context, 1 megawatt is equivalent to 1 million watts of power, meaning this secret weapon is capable of firing a beam of light that can travel massive distances. In theory, it should be capable of cutting through steel like butter. It also should be both powerful and fast enough to intercept incoming missiles while they're in mid-flight, which makes the A-60 both a terrifying attack threat and an imperious defensive presence. That's assuming that the laser works. More on that in a moment. United 24 Media adds that Russia initially began developing the A-60 so that it could target reconnaissance aircraft and high-altitude balloons. The Telegraph adds that Russia intended for this laser to travel for up to 25 miles, with the A-60 delivering a 50-second firing sequence that made its laser a difficult threat to escape from for any jet caught in the aircraft's sights. However, a laser that strong requires a lot of power to make it work. And it may be in this area that we see the reason why Russia has always struggled to take the A-60 from the prototype stage to the operational stage. The idea for the A-60 dates back to 1975. United 24 Media reports, and the original prototype took its maiden flight over 40 years ago. The same outlet also notes that the power required for the A-60's massive laser is provided by a pair of 2.1 megawatt turbo generators, which are placed near the aircraft's rear landing gear bays. That gives the A-60 a recognizable tail end, which will become more important later when we examine the proof that Ukraine took out this ultra-secret jet. Russia has tested the A-60 many times since its 1981 maiden flight, sometimes successfully. The aircraft managed to score hits on several stratospheric balloons and a target plane during its main testing phase in the 1980s. However, the combination of the collapse of the Soviet Union and a 1989 fire that destroyed the original A-60 prototype set Russia back. The program remained frozen throughout the 1990s, though Russia revived the A-60 in the 2000s, albeit while trying to keep the aircraft as secret as possible. In 2009, Russia started conducting more tests of the A-60's lasers, firing one at the Japanese Agisai geodetic satellite. The beam bounced back, offering a faint reflection. But the world saw the test for what it really was, Russia experimenting with a laser that it could use to destroy space-based threats. News of the A-60 went quiet after this test against Japan's satellite, indicating that Russia likely believed that the plane into which it had poured untold amounts of money since the Soviet era wasn't ready. Now it never will be. Ukraine has just destroyed one of the two known prototypes of the A-60 that are known to exist, and that's not the only damage it did with the Taganrog strike. Several of Russia's other aircraft were destroyed too. TWZ reports that Ukraine's strike on Taganrog appears to have destroyed either an A-100 Airborne Early Warning and Control or AEW&C aircraft, or an A-100LL test aircraft. The A-100LL has rear fuselage supports for the main radome, which serve as evidence of this fact. That radome wasn't fitted on the A-100LL at the time of Ukraine's strike. That doesn't matter. Like the A-60, the airframe has gone up in flames. The war zone also notes that Beriev's Taganrog facility is home to Russia's A-50 AEW&C aircraft, which may well have been among Ukraine's primary targets alongside the newer A-100. The A-50 has been in Ukraine's crosshairs throughout the war. At least two of these aircraft have been shot down, with another damaged by a drone strike, to the point that Moscow has reportedly considered restarting A-50 production to rebuild its dwindling fleet. In a separate report, TWZ explains why the A-50, of which Russia had only 9 before Putin launched his invasion, is so critical. These aircraft can provide a unique look-down air picture that can extend deep into Ukrainian-controlled territory, depending on their patrol zone, the outlet notes. From the outset, the A-50 was designed to detect low-level cruise missile attacks, and the same capability means that it can potentially spot Ukrainian drone attacks too, as well as low-flying fighter sorties. When Ukraine strikes a hub like Taganrog, it isn't just destroying aircraft on the ground, it's chipping away at the very systems Russia relies on to see and control the battlefield. What Ukraine pulled off on November 24th is a strike on the scale of which Russia couldn't have expected, and that's just in Taganrog alone. Other locations were hit, and Putin will be left asking a question that he would have loved to have an answer for before Russia's secret A-60 and its other airframes were taken out. How did Ukraine manage to pull this off? The Kyiv Post offers the most likely explanation. It says that Ukraine's weapons arrived low and took a seaward route that allowed them to approach Taganrog from the southwest. Low flight makes missiles and drones harder for air defenses to detect. Combine this type of low-altitude flight with the relatively small size of Ukraine's drones, and you get a massive problem for Russia's air defenses. And Russia knows about this problem, as revealed in a report written by St. Petersburg Electrotechnical University professor Sergei Makarenko. Over the course of 193 pages, Makarenko calls Russia's air defenses practically useless against Ukraine's drones, albeit in the politest way that he can, and he offers the example of Russia's Tor system to prove it. The practical experience of experimental firing at small targets with Tor indicates the low efficiency of their destruction, Makarenko wrote. The main reasons for this are the imperfection of the SAM, or surface-to-air missile warhead detonation control system, as well as large errors in target tracking and SAM guidance on small-sized UAVs. This is a problem that exists across all of Russia's air defense platforms. Ukraine takes advantage of it masterfully, and on November 24th it took advantage by destroying one of Russia's top-secret aircraft, along with several others. Russia, of course, has hidden all mentions of the loss of its A-60 in its responses to Ukraine's overnight assault. The Kyiv Post reports that the regional authorities in Taganrog released statements claiming that some damage was caused by drone debris created by successful interceptions by air defense systems. There was also mention of that debris striking production facilities, though there were no mentions of what those facilities were. As for the A-60, not a word came from the Taganrog authorities about Ukraine's strike on it or the airfield that housed it. Russia is trying to deny and deflect. There's so much evidence of Ukraine's success that these typical Russian tactics won't work anywhere outside of Russia itself. Social media is already packed with photographs, videos, and first-hand accounts of what happened at Taganrog, with some of the images even proving that Ukraine hit Russia's A-60 prototype. For instance, a photograph published on X shows what appears to be a Russian airframe that is on fire as a result of Ukraine's drones. That airframe is the A-60, the X account claims, and the flames shown in its picture are clearly large enough to have caused serious damage to the aircraft. The Noel Reports X channel we mentioned earlier also published a bevy of pictures and videos taken by Taganrog residents showing fires raging in the distance. Those fires appear to be emanating from the Beriev repair facility. One of the videos seems nondescript at first, only for the sound of a massive explosion that interrupts the person shooting the video to reveal that Ukraine scored at least one direct and extremely damaging hit. The proof keeps on coming, this time from the special Kherson Cat X account, which published a pair of satellite images showcasing the damage caused at the Beriev plant by Ukraine's drones and missiles. Damage to the Russian A-60 and Il-76 could also be an A-100, as well as Beriev aviation plant as a result of tonight's attack, reads the caption that accompanies a before and after shot of the plant. Look at the bottom left of each photograph and you see the A-60 that Ukraine attacked. In the aftershot, the plane is clearly destroyed. Over 40 years of Russian work down the drain in the space of a few hours. Finally, the Status 6 X account shared the same satellite images, in addition to photographs highlighting the unique tail that the A-60 is known to have. The account expands a picture of the A-60 on fire to showcase that tail, and compares it to one of the few pictures of the A-60 that are in circulation to show that what Ukraine hit and the secret jet are one and the same. Russia can't deny all of this evidence. Putin's secret experimental jet is no more. That jet isn't the only major target that Ukraine struck either. We mentioned in the beginning of the video that Ukraine also struck oil refineries. Ukraine also targeted Novorossiysk, which TWZ notes is a port city that Ukraine has targeted several times over the past few months. The city's port handles around 2 million barrels of oil per day, making it responsible for around 5% of the world's total maritime oil supplies when it's operating at full capacity. It appears that Ukraine hit that port, and it also seems that Russia's air defenses failed so badly at stopping those drones that Russia ended up hitting itself. A video posted to X by the Status 6 account shows what it claims is a Ukrainian drone striking a multi-story resident building, seemingly after being sent off course by Russia's electronic warfare systems. TWZ offers a different account of what's seen in the video, claiming that it shows a Russian air defense missile striking the building after failing to take out an incoming drone. It's unclear which account is true, but the footage alone proves that Ukraine had Novorossiysk in its sights. On any other night, this Novorossiysk strike might have grabbed the headlines, as might have other Ukrainian drones that touched down in the Krasnodar Krai region of Russia. But not on November 24th, The destruction of Russia's A-60 has rightfully grabbed all of the headlines. In addition to exposing a massive weakness that Russia still hasn't managed to fix, Russia's air defenses can't stop Ukraine's drones and missiles. We touched on this earlier when discussing the weakness of these systems when it comes to identifying and targeting small and low-flying drones as they make their approaches to targets. However, Russia's air defense issues go much deeper than that. On September 5th, the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, claimed that Russia is on course to completely run out of its anti-drone air defense missiles in a matter of months. RUSI's claims, which were published by The Sun, suggest that the Ukraine now has a window of opportunity that it can use to strike high-value Russian targets such as airfields. RUSI's Dr. Jack Watling told The Sun, based on current trends, they are due to almost run out by February, when speaking about Russia's air defense missiles. He added that this is something that has happened to Russia before, and it tends to replenish its missile stockpiles after burning through them. However, the period between February and whenever that replenishment happens gives Ukraine its window of opportunity through which it will be able to exploit Russia's shortages and weaknesses to hit a growing number of targets and put pressure on Russian industry. Perhaps the A-60 strike shows that this missile shortfall is affecting Russia earlier than Watling anticipated. Russia may now be at that point where it's having to pick and choose the potential targets that it defends on its own territory, and Taganrog must not have made the cut. Putin will be regretting that decision now that his secret jet and his high-powered laser have been destroyed. Defense Express also reported on Russia's shortfall in air defense assets in a November 23rd article, where it stated that this shortfall has left the country's nuclear facilities vulnerable. The upside for Russia is that Ukraine is very unlikely to target these kinds of facilities, as it doesn't want to be responsible for a nuclear catastrophe. However, the outlet also notes that the Artesh partisan group that operates inside Russia has scoped out one nuclear facility, only to discover that there are no air defense units protecting it. As a result, the strategic nuclear facility and the city are left virtually defenseless, the outlet claims before it makes the key point. The lack of air defense systems at a strategically important facility clearly indicates critical losses and a shortage of air defense resources in the Russian military command. If such a vital facility has been left without air defenses, how many others inside Russia have the same problem? Ukraine may have exposed one of the answers with its strike against Russia's A-60. Putin will now be hoping that Ukraine doesn't have any more intel that could lead it to other unguarded facilities deep in the heart of Russia. We mentioned that Russia may soon run out of its air defense missiles. That isn't the only shortage that Putin has to contend with, as there's another that will have an even more direct impact on Russia's success inside Ukraine. It's not just missiles and tanks. Russia is running out of artillery as Ukraine obliterates it all. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of the latest long-range strikes that Ukraine conducts. And thank you for watching.